Hey everybody, it's Mike. So, what do we talk about tonight? Let's talk about what seems to be on, aside from Congress, what's on everybody's mind. Artificial intelligence's upcoming collapse. It may or may not. It depends on whether the collapse of computing is about what actually works for people, or if it's about chasing that dream of an AI system on its own evolving into something that's better than we are, and it's not happening. Some kind of uber intelligence that designs itself, and then we have to deal with, but everybody's going to want it. If you make tokens free, maybe, but you're not. I have no idea what the token system is, but I know it's expensive. And maybe if you have so many data centers that the price of tokens crashes, that might be possible. But unless you're willing to go as far as having enough data centers to crash the token market, so tokens become very, very, very cheap, yeah, there's not going to be. This is a boom, a bubble. It's not going to last, and it's not going to work either. So doesn't mean we don't have demand for data centers. But the thing is, if you want to have a demand for data centers, you have to find something useful. And right now, AI is not as useful as it can be, nor is free internet sites as good as they can be, because they can't stay free, actually. There's a bubble, and people are putting lots of money into it, and so much money that the insurance markets and the bond markets are sucking up the risk, and that's not going to end well. Although the thing that's really going to break us isn't that as much as the fact that as leases stop and a lot of land rents, that land debt that's needs to be renegotiated can't pass the appraisal smell test. So the banks are going to own that property, and then the banks are going to look at that property and say fire sale, unless they can find somebody else with that property. Hopefully, something good could happen if we're ready for it. Pay attention to this. Spread this one around. Housing. If all these commercial real estate places suddenly increase housing in urban areas, then that's a good thing. Government could do that, or employers could do that. In a socialist model, or an employee-owned model, employee-owned socialism, an employer would take a chunk of a building and then make the rest of the chunk of it apartments and condos for his employees, or her employees, or their employees, themselves together would take care of the commercial real estate by making it dual use, and housing on the top, maybe even some food production, gardening and stuff, restaurant, stuff like that. Grow some hydroponic vegetables on a few levels, a lot of levels actually. Maybe some trees on the roof, a lot of trees, maybe a couple levels of them. But, buy the trees out in an orchard, but put housing and work in the same place. And then allow enough free time on the schedule so that people can actually leave during the day and enjoy the rest of the city. And time off, and it needs to be employee-owned ownership, not, and it needs to be successful enough here that it goes over in Korea and Japan. They've got their own problems, and they're cultural, and we can't change them for them. They have to see it themselves, and maybe the young people have to revolt. That's what they need, is the young people revolting against the system, just saying, not just passively saying no, but actively. But yeah, the current economy isn't going to go well, and the people who decided, we don't want to pay our corporate gains taxes when we sell, they just screwed themselves. Because if they'd have taken the money, then their personal assets would not be screwed, because they borrowed against their assets and their assets are now becoming less worthy. You know, people are gonna be poor who are rich, and I have no, you know, the reason they did that was because of taxes. And, you know, guys, pay your taxes. Pay the cash out now, pay your capital gains taxes, which will greatly reduce the deficit, the debt. And that's the soft landing. We need the rich people to actually have a soft landing. If they do that, their world will not explode. They will be rich still. You know, they have to, but they need to sell first. You know, and not hold their assets as debt. Because if they do that, then, you know, when you renegotiate it, you won't be able to get it because the assets aren't worth as much, and they're going to be worth a lot less soon. So, you know, the rich people need to really serve their own interests and pay your capital gains taxes. Because if they do that, they'll stay rich. If they didn't do that, they'll get real poor real fast. You know, my level of poverty. So hopefully they, you know, contributed to Social Security because they'll need it. So yeah, if they survive. Some people can't survive that kind of loss, and they just, you know, unalive themselves. But yeah, rich people, the ball's in your court. Take your capital gains penalty, or take your capital gains tax hit, and pay off as much debt as you can. Then you have something, rather than control something. There's that difference. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about real AI, because this is what people want. They don't want AI to take over for them or take over their lives. They want AI to assist them. And businesses want AI to assist them, but profitably. The way that is to know cognition and culture. I have something to say about that, because that's what I'm working on in my doctorate now. Or what I'm doing in lieu of a doctorate. You know, I'm too old to actually get a PhD, because there's a whole process that you go to that. And there's a whole thing that you do afterwards, and I'm beyond that. I can just publish my stuff. So, yeah, I don't need to... I need some help in getting stuff published in journals, but I can do a book by myself and promote it by myself if I really figure out to do that, because academics don't really do that either. PhD doesn't tell you how to sell a book, you know, except for going to conferences. And I can join ASA, the American Sociological Association, without actually being a PhD student. I can just be a sociologist, because I can do that. I've got, you know, enough credentials as a public administrator to say, yeah, I do sociology too, because I do a lot of sociology. And this is a sociological model. So, and I'm known among people who follow Douglas and Wildavsky as somebody who's, you know, I'm active in that small group. So this is what the Douglas Wildavsky young version of artificial intelligence is. There are 8 cognitive functions, and you can map those cognitive functions onto social roles. And if you do both at the same time, you can create a working artificial intelligence. Not that controls everything, you know, that or uploads you into a sphere where you can be physically conscious about what the machine is doing to you. You know, to like feel what it's like to be a chip. Why anybody would want to do that? But if you really want to be a full uploaded AI, you've got to, at some point, some level, have knowledge of whether the chip's hurt or not. And that's an awful way to spend eternity, is to figure out what it's like to be a chip. Yeah, think about it really hard. That's, you know, it's kind of what it becomes. But if you do it so that you've got a model for either the company or for the individual member of the company, or a combination of the two, and there's privacy concerns for employee rights here. Again, if it's employee-owned, not so much. Then it's easier to get them. But, you know, the 8 cognitive functions, internal and external intuition, thinking, feeling, and sensing, you can do an AI version of, or a computerized version of those. Introverted sensing is extroverted sensory is sensation, where you actually, look at physical conditions and environmental conditions if you have to. Introverted thinking is the ability to settle on a plan. That's what after, but it has to have all the inputs. Right now, generative AI doesn't have the inputs. And again, introverted sensing memory. It's got to remember its own stuff, and it's got to remember all the data too. And the data doesn't change. Introverted thinking, the analysis part of that, the logic rules that an education provides. Extroverted thinking, that's the knowledge of disciplines. That's like knowing what's known in sociology instead of figuring it out every question. Like Watson. Watson does trivia that way, and but you can have sociological knowledge, 4.0 or whatever, with each of the a module for each university course. It has the relevant facts and how they relate to other relevant facts. And like people who are polymaths, who are extroverted thinking, know how things link up. Like I can link sociology and cultural theory and religion and all that. Thinking like that is what extroverted thinking. And then what works when you borrow those two together. But that takes an expert to do. It doesn't take a large language model. LLMs can't do that. Okay. Then there's introverted feeling, which is a moral compass. Again, that's something that you've got to choose which moral compass you go by, and then have all decisions made be judged against that moral compass, so that anything that it does that's outside of that you don't do. Like, for instance, spying on your employees. If you have an ethics that says don't spy on your employees, don't tell the manager, even if somebody's out to put together people to fire him, you don't say that. You don't let somebody co-opt the system. If that's one of the things, it should be apparent. Whatever the moral center is, it should be a public conversation that leads to what the moral center of the enterprise and the program has. Extroverted thinking figures out what people are thinking and feeling. That's surveys. And AI can do that. What do people feel about this? What do people like? What do people don't like? All that. We do that now. We do it all the time. Taking the temperature in the room. That's what extroverted feeling is. And that's everything. Oh, and extroverted intuition is what generative AI does, kind of. It's scouring. Instead of like making stuff up, though, it's looking at all the sources of extroverted thinking and say, okay, what are the options in this situation? Extroverted thinking knows the options. Extroverted intuition then looks at the options and says, okay, what applies to us? What shall I offer the group? What should I offer the organization? What should I offer the CEO? What are those 5 things that you want to choose from? Then intuitive thinking then does that. Intuition then does that. Or it presents the preferred option. One comes up with the options, the other decides the options and puts the plan together. It's like introverted intuition is like the thing that integrates everything into a plan using all the data that I've talked about. That's how you make an AI work. That's how a person works, okay? And an AI can do all of those functions, but it has to do them all. And it has to do them all not by its own ass or by figuring out itself or by being taught. There are actual facts and actual rules and actual data and actual feelings and actual morals and actual methods of thinking that have to be part of your model. If they're not part of your model, then your model is shit. Okay? That's how you build an AI. And that's how you do. And the other part is the social part where, various social skills are happened by various occupations and various people. So some people are all about their identities. Some people are all about the physical. Some people are about logic and obligation. Most people are like kind of even on the obligation and the freedom, but they're more sensory than intuitive. the masses, the people that cultural theory doesn't talk about because they're normal. And certain of my fellow cultural theorists say, oh, they're the victims. No, they're not the victims. They're just everybody. You know, I'm doing a statistical runs in the next semester that will show exactly how many people, based on their occupation, are which way of life. And that was, and you know, if your AI considers those social fabrics as well as the cognitive fabrics, then it's useful. So that's the AI model that will work. You know, what do your hierarchists do? What do your capitalists do? And what does your police state do? And you've got to have a thing that limits those things. You know, limits the despotism, because you know, extreme grid or extreme logic result, but without group protection is the iron law of like the police state, totalitarianism. Yeah, you've got to have a level of freedom and autonomy that makes sure that's not oppressive but still keeps an order. So yeah, you've got to know all of those functions with all of those environments, and you know where the CEO falls, where your scientists fall, and your social scientists, and your homeless people, and your workers, and your reformers, and being able to, and your people who just like freedom, your libertarians who are against corporate libertarianism, which is the high real corporate libertarians reserve the ability to screw everybody else. They use their freedom badly. That's what the capitalists are. They're called crony capitalists, but really that's what the capitalists are. Anybody who buys and sells wants an advantage. That's why free markets work. And the more advantage you have, the more likely you are to be a despot, which is what libertarians miss. So, you know, the Libertarian Party model leads to coercion. They call it crony capitalism, but it's actually a function, not a feature, not a flaw. It's a flawed feature. So, you know, that's cognition mixed with social roles. There'll be a book. But yeah, if you hear this, you know, and you like the fact that I've just shown you all of cognition so society works together, you know, all the cheat sheet for all of society, share this with somebody. You know, go viral, and if you really want to know how people function in groups and individually, yes, share this and follow. And now for that last bit about following, by the way, and about all these models of advertising. You know, there's a new movie about The Social Reckoning, which is, you know, Facebook Part 2. When I got into Facebook, there were two things you could do that I loved. One was post notes. So if I wrote congressional testimony, I would post it as a note. So then people and I would say, you know, look at this, people, I wrote this and it's on there, so that my friends can then see and, you know, read my stuff. Or my followers or my connections. I had another Facebook account for my professional world or my political world, and I would say, hey, I did this testimony, you want to look at it? And I don't know how many people did, but at least it gave me that option and I liked it. And then they took notes away. Not sure why, because you can't advertise on them, that's why. The function that everybody loved that they took away, and there's no way to replace it. You can still have your groups, you know, groups got hidden. Like your groups of friends, your groups of colleagues, you know, the high school, the people you went to high school with, the people you went to college with, the people you went to grad school with, the people in your 12-step fellowship. You know, you used to be able to have, not only have those groups, but then get the feed for those groups. So you could, you know, ad free pretty much see what that person you dated in high school was doing, or the girl you wanted to date in college but she married somebody else was doing, or whatever. You know, see what your fraternity brothers are doing. That you can keep track of your friends. That's just what Facebook was supposed to be, keeping track of your friends. And doing it quickly. You know, you do one friend group, another friend group, another friend group. You know, it takes you an hour and you can see what everybody you love is doing. You can't do that now with Facebook. Those groups are not functional. You can have them, but you can't follow them like that. Which is why nobody's using it anymore, except for a birthday greeting. And you know, and if you can have a small group of people you really follow, but it'd be nice to follow my cousins and see everything that they do online. Except they don't post it anymore. I don't post everything I'm doing online. Some of it I do. But because nobody's listening. Because there's too many freaking ads. Too many freaking people I'm following that, you know, they force that following on me. You know, there should be a group where you can go, you know, who do I follow? You know, that should be an option, and maybe even let ads go to that. But I don't want an ad if I'm checking on my cousin's kids, which I don't even friend. Because they don't know who I am, but at least I can find out from my cousin what's going on. You know, from her feed, I can find out what her kids are doing. Like from my niece's feed, you know, my niece knows me, but she's got kids, and I find out what's going on with her babies, my grandnieces and nephews. If they rise to my feed, and not the latest Hollywood starlet to get sober or find a new diet or whatever, you know. At least on Android, you don't have that much dreck. On basic Facebook, yeah, it's so people aren't using it. So nobody's watching the ads. There may be some bots watching the ads, and it's driving up revenue. But, you know, eventually the people who advertise on Facebook will figure out that the people who are seeing the ads don't use the product, and they're running up ads that they're and the funny thing is, a lot of the advertisers are people who want more visibility on Facebook. So it's like it's called the dead internet, which is why AI as it is constantly now is in trouble. It's called the dead internet, where you have advertisers who advertise on platforms, and other people view the advertisements who aren't real. You know, there are all kinds of places in Asia and Indonesia which have bots generate looks and generate hits on advertisers. So, you know, it's all one thing where people are, and you know, and and the bots are looking at things that trigger the ads, and the bots are also, you know, viewing the things. Other bots are viewing the ads and viewing the posts. And there's no real people involved. It's a dead internet. And it's so obnoxious that nobody else is actually using Facebook anymore. So if you're advertising on Facebook, likely it is, you know, you're not even a person anyway. You're trying to bump up your views, so sell the ads to Facebook or get the ad revenue from Facebook. And it's, you know, it does Zuck some good. It's the ultimate scam. And because people are going to figure out it's the ultimate scam, all those shares in Facebook that Zuck has, it's going to be useless. When people figure out how bad Facebook is followed. And the only way, I mean, he had this thing, I don't want to charge people for Facebook. Charge us. Give me an ad-free experience so that I can post my notes and see my friends and family without ads. I will pay for that. I'll pay $20 a month for that. Hell, I'll pay $30 a month for that, as long as I don't get the ads. And as long as everybody else does that too, or $20. Make it 20 so that people will actually join. Maybe 10. But the thing is, you know, it'll give you more revenue than what I view it on ads. And your advertisers are sure that they're not, you know, and there may be some things I go on to and see some ads. I mean, yeah, if I'm done with looking at friends and family, I might go on and look at other stuff. But if I'm off Facebook, there's nobody. There's guarantees you the ads you see are fake. And all that stock you're borrowing against will collapse, and people will come after your physical assets because your electronic assets, Mark, will be useless. or worthless. And if your assets are gone, your toys are gone, your house is gone. You know, you'll be pawning shit. Unless you take the capital gains taxes. If you're borrowing against your Facebook assets, you're screwed. And you've screwed yourself by having a product that's turned into a circle jerk among bots. You know, bot watchers, bot ad clickers, bot content creators, bot ad viewers, bot ad generators. Eventually, there's nothing there. And because if that's the model that everybody's doing, that's the model. You know, at least Facebook, at least on YouTube, which is where you're seeing this. You know, there's real content. Some of it's slop, and you can usually tell. And there's probably bots looking at the end. I know there are bots giving you likes and looks, because I've had encountered somebody who's a Facebook content creator in Indonesia who told me they can, you know, I can up my views by just cheaply hiring a bot farm to give me views so that so more people will see my stuff, although those people will probably be bots. You know, dead internet, dead YouTube. You know, the last person to go to Nebula and turn off YouTube, you know, turn out the lights, okay? So, yeah. And there's some AI generated stuff that I like, because it's not just generated by AI, it's a story enabled by AI and I. The Hogwarts fantasy. Great stuff. You know, that's AI at its finest, when you've got a creative who, inside a story, gives you plots with the characters and creates characters. You could have as many Star Trek Next Generation and Star Trek Original Series plots that you can, you know, using artificially intelligent, you know, put it in a script and and even, you know, have some ad lib. So there's innumerable amounts of Star Trek Original Series episodes that are true to the original, as long as you've got a creator who's true to the original and writes a script. And, like, you know, my cousin's wife Linda, you know, writes those stories. Linda Bendner, she's a fan fiction creator, well-known one. So yeah, my cousin Tom's daughter-in-law is somebody who writes Star Trek stuff. Hopefully she's doing well. They're a little younger than I am, so hopefully they're still alive. She'd had a stroke that was fixed. So yeah, but she's a wonderful force of nature. So hopefully, you know, she's still writing good stuff. And yeah, they could all be episodes. She's written stories that could be great episodes, and hopefully somebody will then catch them, adapt them to an AI non-slop story, and, you know, and get the license to actually use the characters in Star Trek, and give us new episodes of the original series. So with all the camp that involves, we should put camp in it. Star Trek, you know, camp is good. Trekkers love camp, as people who watch the current episode will get to, where Kermit the Frog meets Bobby Ewing. Let's just put it that way. If you understand what that reference is, you'll know the punchline of the episode. Sorry for spoilers. Yeah. So that's what we want from Facebook. You can do that. You know, sell some memberships, you know, maybe Facebook Plus or something, where I can follow my groups, my friends and my family, without ads, until I go into another sector. Go into Reels too. I love Reels. If I can go to Reels and notes and see my friends' notes and not get the slop, then yeah. Then Mark may be able to keep his lifestyle. If Mark doesn't do this, Mark, you're going to be a poor man. Same with all this other stuff. You know, Nebula has found a way to make life work with people who pay subscription prices. Facebook can do the same thing. AI can do the same thing, not by finding large language models, but by modeling human social and cognitive functions, which I have let people know how to do it. If you liked what I said, share it, like it. If you don't like what I said, comment on it. But yeah, if you care about the internet existing, share this. You think, screw it, don't share this. Let it fall. In the end, I still have food. I still have a house. I still have benefits that help me pay for the house and buy the food. So, no skin off my back if you don't do it with it. So, you know, I have a lifetime income and lifetime benefits, as long as, you know, somebody doesn't try to screw them. And there's too many of us who won't let that happen. You know, we're old and get benefits. So, yeah. We will last longer than the people who've borrowed money to have fortunes that are meaningless. So, and borrowing against them with money that doesn't really exist because they don't want to pay their property, their capital gains taxes. Again, that's on another thing too. That's fiscalequity.blogspot.com. I've got all the plans on how to do an asset value added tax that replaces capital gains taxes, which, you know, helps people get rid of dump their assets to people who will make better use of them or not, and people won't accept the junk because it's their ass on it, the line. You know, it shows how to deflate the situation. So, no skin off my back if you don't, but a nice world if you do. That's all I got. Thanks. Happy next week.